What's growing on, gardeners? It's time we feed our soil, and on today's video I'm going to share with you my secret recipe that will make your plants explode with growth and productivity. This isn't clickbait, this is the exact procedure I use every single year that provides incredible results in my garden and on my fruit trees, and I'm going to share this with you. Add this to your soil for more fruit and bigger harvests.
If you're new to the channel, please subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and check out my Amazon store and Spreadshop links in the video description for everything I use in my garden and awesome custom apparel and gear.
The best time to do this is about 45 to 60 days before your last frost date or before your fruit trees begin breaking bud and waking up from dormancy, or before you want to plant in any of your raised garden beds, because you want to give these nutrients time to break down and leach into the soil, and also for the materials to cool off a little bit. This will become clear later in the video. And for this entire procedure to work, we only need two ingredients: compost and bone meal. And when I say compost, I don't mean this stuff, I mean the real stuff. Instead of buying overpriced bagged compost products that are mass-produced and not very good, I want you to get the real stuff from a local supplier that makes it on site. Go to Google Maps and type in mulch yard, and you will probably have many different mulch yards to choose from that make their own compost on site. Give some people a call, ask around, talk to the owner or the manager, ask how it's made, physically go there and verify and look at the compost pile and make sure that they're making it on site there and not having it trucked in from elsewhere. Then order yourself a big dump truck load and have it delivered to your house, or if you have a pickup truck, a lot of times they'll fill it on site so you can avoid the delivery fee. Every year I order a big dump truck load of compost, and I just had a big monster delivered, 8 cubic yards, because I'm building some new raised garden beds. So now I'm going to show you exactly how to use that big old load of compost to make your garden and fruit trees explode. Look, most people are not going to need 8 yards of compost. For most people, 2 to 3 yards is probably all they will need. But I just built 2 monster deep raised garden beds that required over 4 cubic yards just to fill the 2, and the delivery fee is flat no matter how much you order. So I figured, just fill me up. But for most of you, you probably have a smaller garden and less fruit trees than I do, so don't think you have to deal with this monster pile unless you want it. But of course, even if you don't need this whole pile right now, you could always get as much as you want delivered and dumped to an area that won't be in your way. Then just cover it with a tarp and just landscape staple the tarp down to keep the rain off, and you can just come and go as you please using this compost throughout the year. So if you're looking to fill some brand new raised garden beds as cheaply as possible using the best materials, the best way to do that is by ordering a bulk topsoil compost blend from a local mulch yard. And that is what you see right here. That is the most effective way to fill brand new raised garden beds. And don't they look beautiful? But soil health isn't something we focus on just one time when we're filling our raised garden beds. We have to focus on it every single year, because the annual vegetables that we grow in our beds, well, they take so much more from the soil than they give back. So every single year, we have to add fresh organic matter and more nutrients back into the soil to account for the things the last planting took out. All of these raised garden beds that you see right here are new. I built them all last year, and I filled them with compost and topsoil from the exact same supplier I just showed you. But you will notice that the beds have sunk. Quite a bit, actually. And why does that happen? Well, for 2 reasons. Number 1, fresh soil settles naturally, so there will be some settlement in the soil. But number 2, I grew lots and lots of plants in these beds for an entire year, so every time I pulled up some roots or I removed crops, I wound up taking just a little bit of soil with it. And over the course of an entire year, it means that we need to top off these raised garden beds a little bit. Luckily, this is a very simple procedure. All we're going to do is we're going to take the load of topsoil and compost, and I'm going to add a few shovelfuls to each raised garden bed. And the goal here is to add 2 to 3 inches of this fresh compost and topsoil to the top of each garden bed, which is perfect because that's roughly how far the garden beds sank. So really all I'm doing is I'm going to bring these raised garden beds back up to the level that they were last year. And of course, you could just use a wheelbarrow or use the dump cart itself to dump the load of topsoil and compost in the bed, but I'm just showing you how to do this manually for the sake of the camera. And then when that's all done, we are just going to take a rake and we are going to evenly spread the compost in a 2 to 3 inch layer on top of the garden soil. And then we will have a fully renutrified bed almost ready to plant in for the new garden season. And now the raised garden bed has been topped off and leveled, and it looks absolutely fantastic. This will be ready to plant in about 45 days, maybe a little less. Now I just want to go ahead and do the same thing to all my other raised garden beds. But that begs the question, why do we have to wait to plant in our raised garden beds after we amend them with compost? Well, when you get a big load of compost from a real mulch yard, that compost is going to be hot. It was steaming coming off the truck, so it's going to be still within the hot composting process because they're pulling it from a massive mountain on site where it has enough mass to create that hot composting effect. So you need to give this compost several weeks to cool down. Last year, I was way behind schedule and I ordered my compost load several weeks late, so I tried planting a couple of test tomato plants in the garden bed after only giving them about 2.5 weeks to settle down, and it actually killed a couple of them because the hot composting process was still there. It burned up the roots of the plant. So that's why I'm saying do this 45 days ahead of time, at least 30 days ahead of time. The more time you can give that compost to settle down and cool off, the safer it will be for your plants. And it also gives the soil more time to absorb the nutrients in that compost, so we can get a few rainy days and have those nutrients leach out of the compost and into the rest of the garden soil. And remember how I told you to use real compost, not the bagged stuff? Well, this is all of the real compost I got from the mulch yard. You'll see it is relatively fine grain, it is deep, it is dark. It just looks like beautiful, loamy, well-draining stuff. And in the bed right next to it, I used bagged compost. I put down 2 inches in advance of making this video for a comparison, and this stuff is like concrete by comparison. It's not nearly as nice. It is not nearly as fine. The particle size is large. There's a lot of chunks of wood in it. It's just no comparison versus this real stuff that you get from your local landscape supply place. And to renutrify our garden beds for the new season, all we need is this high quality compost. We don't need any other types of soil amendments or fertilizers. In fact, we don't want to put fertilizers in our beds weeks in advance of planting because raised beds are designed to drain quickly. So if you put a lot of fertilizer in this bed and you don't plant in it for weeks or a month or two, well, you could actually have that fertilizer break down and just leak out of the raised garden beds, wasting it. This compost holds on to the nutrients very well and it decays slowly, so the compost is going to hold those nutrients. Then when we actually transplant things into our garden, into the planting holes, we will use targeted fertilizers like things like granular organics and bone meal in order to target the root area specifically. It's much more efficient this way. But when it comes to our fruit trees, things are different. With our fruit trees, we're also going to add a bone meal amendment, and that's because our fruit trees are growing in the earth, and the earth isn't going to wash out like a fast draining raised garden bed. The reason why we are using bone meal specifically is because it is a concentrated source of phosphorus and calcium, which is excellent for root development, and phosphorus also boosts the blooming of our plants without adding a large nitrogen component. Because if you add a lot of nitrogen to your fruit trees, it could cause them to branch out and make lots of leaves at the expense of fruit. We are actually going to target the fruiting and blooming cycle of our trees using these ingredients. And bone meal can take several months to break down. That's why we're doing this 45 to 60 days in advance of bud break. We want the nutrients to break down and leach into the soil in advance of the trees waking up from the dormant season. And this process is pretty simple. We're just going to take 2 or 3 handfuls of bone meal and we are going to work it in a circular pattern around the base of the tree, but about 2 feet out from the center, because that is where the actual roots are on your established trees. We don't want to pile the bone meal up against the trunk. Then we are going to take our shovel and we're going to place several heaping helpings of compost on top of the bone meal. Then we will take our rake and we will rake it out into a ring about 2 or so inches thick on top of the bone meal. And the idea is introducing all of the bacterial and fungal cultures from the fresh compost will help lock that bone meal into place and also help accelerate its breakdown, especially after we get a couple of rainy days. This is why we want to put the bone meal on first and then put the compost on top of it. And here is the result of our efforts. We have our oregano plant. I have all of my apple trees, all 3 of them. I have my peach tree right here. I have my 3-in-1 grafted Asian pear, as well as my garden sage. And I have my non-astringent Asian persimmon right here. And my 2 pawpaw trees right here. Just like that, I fertilized all of these trees, and they are good to go for the entire season now. They're good until the fall. It is that simple, folks. And as you can see, every single one of them are completely stone dormant. There is really no sign of any of them waking up from dormancy, which is exactly what we want to see. Maybe there's just a minor amount of bud swell on this peach right here, but the apple trees are stone dormant. That is exactly what we want. We want to give this compost and bone meal as much time as possible to break down and leach their nutrients into the soil in advance of these trees waking up. So when they do wake up, they have a ton of delicious food. And it really is that easy, folks. All you need to re-nutrify your garden is some good, high-quality compost, and all you need to re-nutrify your fruit trees and give them some good food for the new season is a good quality bone meal and compost. If you do these things about 45 days before you're going to plant in your garden and your fruit trees wake up from dormancy, chances are you are going to have one of the best harvests ever. Now, if you're saying, wow, this video was way too long to say that, why didn't you just come out and say that? Well, I'm not here to tell you how to do something because I'm not really an expert. I'm not a guru. I'm a guy that works a full-time job that loves gardening more than anything, and I spend a lot of my free time doing this and figuring things out. So, in my opinion, if I can't explain something to you, exactly why I'm doing it in a way that makes a lot of sense, where that light bulb goes off, you shouldn't take my advice. The why is more important than how. Teach a man how to fish. And it looks like I got done just in time. Now all of that bone meal and the compost is going to get wet, and that's going to help it break down and finish the composting process. So perfect timing. So everybody, I sure hope you found this video helpful and entertaining. If you did, please make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and please ring the notification bell so you're notified when I release more videos like these. For all of the products that I featured in this video, like that life-saving dump cart and bone meal and other things that I used, I'll place direct links down in the video description for your convenience. For everything I use in my yard and garden in real life, that is all linked in my Amazon storefront in the video description. And while you're down there, check out my website, themillennialgardener.com, for all things gardening and for custom homemade design merch if you want to support my channel. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see all of you again on the next video. Did somebody hear the camera turn on? You heard the ding? Does that mean you think you're getting something? Well, you're right. It's Puppuccino Day. I was trying to surprise him, but he heard the camera beep from my phone. That's how smart this little stinker is. Okay, buddy. Dale just had a long walk in the rain. Oh, very good. Up, up, whoa. Okay. The perfect way to start a day.